Today is the day, the big event. 2023-24 annual plan has been through a thorough and challenging process for our new council to work through. Starting from an expected increase of 14.6 to be considered as an increase less than half of that is an incredible result. It has come after months of hard work by councillors and staff who have provided many different options for our council to consider. We have looked at heaps of ways we can reduce rates increases while maintaining our levels of service. We have done this while balancing our own cost increases, namely from inflation, insurance and interest rates. We are all very aware of the importance of reducing the burden to council's rates placed on households given the increased cost of living, especially for those on low and fixed incomes. One factor that is impacting the way the rates are distributed across the city has been the 3-yearly revaluation of properties. This is required by law to be done every 3 years, and timing wasn't great, but it was done by an independent valuer and has been seen some neighbourhoods traditionally with lower house prices increase at a greater percentage than the average. While neighbourhoods in higher value still pay larger average dollar amounts, some neighbourhoods with lower values will see their rates increase by a greater percentage than the average. In February, following months of work looking at options, we proposed a draft annual plan with an overall rates increase of 5.68. This took into account the impact of revaluations and the rising costs of council. People have been very clear over the last several years about what they want. Keep rates down, improve basic infrastructure and maintain our community services, while protecting our waterways, our water supplies and cleaning up our environment and in reducing our emissions. People have told us to lift our game when delivering on these expectations. Some steps we are taking in this annual plan include kept the total rate rise under the rate of inflation, maintained existing levels of service, kept our capital program based on what we can actually deliver, maintained our living wage employer status, which is important, and setting up the roving council maintenance crews to repair footpaths. Our council also made the decision to propose some specific one-off adjustments for the 23-24 financial year to keep rates increases down without cutting services. These include reducing the number of vacancies that are being filled, utilising our subvention receipt revenue, and disposing of unused council properties. Through May and March, the community had the opportunity to have their say and give us a steer on what they would like to see. We received 811 submissions and heard from 115 submitters in person. This was very helpful to give us a direction for the setting of the final annual plan. There are significant areas we heard differing views throughout consultation. Councillors also have differing views on these topics. These are increasing the average daily water allocation to 900 litres for excess water from 700 litres, reducing the uniform annual charge to $50, utilising $1 million from the Community Endowment Fund to offset rates. We will discuss these topics individually and decide how to proceed before our final annual plan is adopted. The outcomes of these debates will determine what overall rates increase figure, what it will be. Since February, several amendments to the draft annual plan have also come up. Amendments advised by staff are based on additional information, submissions analysis and council decisions since the end of February. This includes bringing forward capital funding for Te Kaha because we know how well the team is progressing down there. This will result in lower rates impact towards the end of the project when it was originally budgeted. We have also put forward some amendments after listening to people who submitted. Now, this is a moving feast as the team keep working, so we won't know the final rates rise until all the amendments are voted on. The plan today is to work through the amendments to the draft plan before we finalise the plan, which will start on the 1st of July. I'll now ask Dawn to have a few words.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, I'd like to thank all our staff and the elected members for their incredible hard work in bringing this annual plan forward. Budgeting is always a mammoth task, but in exceptional and unusual years, it is even sometimes more fraught. And on that note, I'd like to welcome our new members and their experience of their first annual plan, and hope it hasn't been too traumatic for you. I also want to thank residents and the organisations that came forward to fully engage in the consultation process. And importantly, as a result, amendments have been proposed as part of the annual plan, taking into consideration views of the public. Setting a budget is always a challenge, and in these exceptional times, it is even more challenging. And it's about getting the balance right for the coming year and weighing that against future years, remembering that this is an annual plan and not a long-term plan process. The one thing I ask of elected members today is that as you consider your amendments and going to debate, you remember about that balancing act, and that not only are you a ward councillor, but you are also representing the whole of the city. So I'd now like to hand back to the Mayor so we can go into the audit and risk matters.
We will now kick things off the audit and risk report. Jake will give us a very in-depth and thorough report.
Thank you, Mr.
An
Mayor.
update of the committee's recommendations. Thank you, Jake.
Thank you. Look, it's important I state that Audit and Risk Management Committee considered the information presented by staff regarding the 23-24 annual plan process. We reviewed the key assumptions and management sign-offs. ARMC agreed the annual plan process was robust and appropriately leveraged what was learnt from the prior year and improvements subsequently made. ARMC resolved to advise Council of an appropriate and effective process has been followed. ARMC was advised that there may be some minor technical amendments to the version of the annual plan endorsed by the committee and that they are immaterial. ARMC complimented the team on striking a reasonable balance between recommending a publicly palatable rate increase whilst formulating a plan that delivered against council outcomes. Thank you.
Thank you, Jake. Very good. I now invite council officers to present the annual plan report and presentation regarding the annual plan.
Thank you, Mr.
Peter
Mayor.
and Leah, thank you.
Look, just a brief introduction before I go over to Leah around the financial side of things. A little context around this report. As the Chief Executive has foreshadowed, this isn't a strategic overview of the city's plans for the future. It's an update to the 21 LTP. The big picture review will be next year's LTP. Having said that, staying abreast of change is vital because this has been a particularly turbulent year. I think you all know the mantra by now. We've had post-COVID headaches. We've had interest, inflation and cost of living hits, supply chain, skill shortages, and of course the Christchurch environment is always dynamic anyway. So if you add all that up, there's been a lot of change from, say, September last year when interest rates were at record lows and all of those things we remember, but they seem like a long time ago. It's taken a lot of briefings to get from the draft and the final to get to this point and to get the steer from council on where we are. With the average residential property rates increase of 6.52. As Councillor McClellan said, it's underpinned by advice from ARMC on a fit-for-purpose process. I think this is a good point for Leah to step you through what has actually changed in our working environment, and I'll hand over to you.
Thanks, Peter. Kia ora, everyone, and welcome to Budget Day. Whilst today the decisions making lies with you all, as your CFO, I have the honour of setting the financial scene. On Friday, we held our Leaders Forum where we pulled all our leaders of council together. And on that day, we heard from two inspirational speakers, Rakahei Tau, who talked about our New Zealand history, and Sir Ian Taylor, who talked about how the laying of our footsteps impact our future. Thinking about this made me consider our most recent past. The ability to adapt to changing environment is a skill most in Christchurch have had to master over the last 13 years. However, we often forget the actual quantum of those impacts, and sometimes it's important to look back and reflect. Whilst they say a picture paints 1,000 words, as I'm an accountant, I wanted to show you how numbers paint a story for me, and hopefully you too. The following two slides reflect a comparison. Two slides reflect a comparison of numbers from June 2010, so pre-earthquake, 7 years later in June 2017, and the latest forecast for 2023. And our numbers show an interesting story. GDP. So when GDP goes up, the economy is generally thought to be doing well. Meanwhile, weak growth signals that the economy is doing poorly. If GDP falls from one quarter to the next, then growth is negative. And this often brings with it falling incomes, lower consumption, and job cuts. No surprise why things seem so tough in 2023. Record high inflation is still a long way off the reserve target of 0 to 3%, meaning things are costing a lot more and requiring interest rates to be risen to try and reduce spending. Record lower unemployment means our labour market is tight, and with the average house price doubling in the last 13 years, means our residents have either large mortgages, high rents, or they are asset rich and cash poor. And yet our population is only just over pre-earthquake levels, and household incomes, unlike our costs, have not doubled. Not surprising, our council numbers have also changed significantly in 13 years as our city has recovered from the devastating earthquakes. It is fair to say we're a different council with different needs to what we were then. Our capital spending has increased 145%, and to fund this, we've had to go from negative debt, and yes, that means we actually had money in the bank, to a debt position we hold today of $1.2 billion, and that doesn't include what's sitting on our holdings company balance sheet. Rates have had to grow even faster, in part because dividends have reduced, and in real terms, on average, our rates increase each year for the last 13 years has been 6%, doubling the average residential rates that our residents pay. Yet household incomes have only increased on average 3.7% a year. Financing costs have become significant, interest and our insurance. And what's worse, this higher inflation environment will keep the pressure on. To quote Charles Dickens, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom and it was the age of foolishness. Christchurch has come a long way in 13 years, and we now have a reborn city, one we are all proud of. But it has come at a cost, and we need to recognise today that the cost compounds every year on our residents and our future generations. So my challenge to you all today, what footsteps are you laying today that will impact the future of our city?
Okay. Look, I've talked to some of these points already. I'm sure you've heard them before, but just to quickly revisit them. We are here to look at the city as a whole, and one of the underpinning principles of this annual plan was to maintain our levels of service and to retain the option of reviewing those for the upcoming LTP. There's also the issue of affordability versus deliverability and stewardship of the asset base. The QV revaluation has been a subject of intense discussion. It's not something we conduct, it's something we have to work with, and its impacts have been profound in many ways. This is a summary of the thematic analysis presented to councillors on the feedback from our community. I'm not going to line by line it today for obvious reasons, but the overwhelming message that came out of this is that our community often has very strongly differing views on the same topics. There was no easy line or thread or theme emerging here that said, do it this way, that's what everybody wants. There's strong divisions around things in particular like transport, but also our community facilities, our footpaths, roads, parks, etc. So this is not an easy path for councillors or staff. There's no simple breadcrumb trail here to follow, but it is part of the picture of the decision-making process. We have had a very thorough examination of what the community told us, and as I said, the picture was not altogether clear, although it was clear on some subjects. That information is available to you, has been for some time in your folders, and will be available to the community as well. Now, there's the story here of how we got to where we are in the financial sense. There's two slides. I think, Leah, perhaps, did you want to talk through this one, or do you want to Or do you think, feel that you've addressed this sufficiently, starting at 14.6 and working through to where we are now?
Noting that the report B has got the changes from the draft to here detailed out.
Yeah, that's very clear to where we got to.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, at this point, there's some procedural issues to deal with before we can move to the big four amendments.
Okay. Are you all done?
Yep, all
Right,
done.
Thank you, Peter and Leah. That's great. Now, have councillors got any questions of staff on what they've just told us? Nope, thank you. I'd like to move it. Pauline seconding it. I'll put it straight to the vote unless anyone's busting for a debate. All those in favour? Against? Thank you very much. Carried. So that we can better deal with amendments, we will now temporarily suspend standing orders. 17.5, members to speak only once, may speak only once. 17.6, limits on the number of speakers. 18.1, general procedure for speaking and moving of motions. 18.8, foreshadowed amendments. And 18.9, lost amendments. I'll move that. Have I got a Tim? Thank you very much. I'll put that straight to vote. All those in favour? Against? Thank you. Right, I will now move to the amendments to the draft annual plan. Following briefings, we were able to send proposed amendments through in advance. Staff have been clear that if there are any amendments raised today, they may not be able to provide adequate advice. If that is the case, then I will rule the amendment out of order because we will not have enough information to make a proper decision. The process today will be that. Firstly, we have the four amendments, which I call the big four, we agreed to debate. These are utilising the $10 million in subventions to offset rates, returning the daily excess water allowance to 700 litres, reducing UAGC to $50, utilising $500,000 of the Capital Endowment Fund to offset rates. For each amendment, we will move and second the amendment. Staff will provide an overview on the topic and you'll be able to ask questions and then we'll move into debate, just like we normally do on any council day. Second, we have what we term the blue amendments, which are noting amendments, amendments A to M. It also has the name of the councillor who raised it in the report, and we will debate and vote on this as a block. Assuming that it is carried, councillors can ask, if they want to have no votes on any specific provision noted. Then thirdly, we will work through the individual council amendments. These will be worked through in three categories: parks and property, transport and waste management, and all other amendments. I think it's only about 10 of them. I think it might be 12. For each of these three categories, I will ask the councillors who proposed it to speak to it. If the amendment is seconded, it will then go forward. There will be only one debate on the whole category. We will then vote on each amendment separately, so don't worry, you're not doing it in a group. And lastly, we will move and second the debate and vote on the staff recommendation regarding the disposal of council-owned properties. This is based on the list draft plan. This is based on the list draft plan list of two properties identified by the residents. They will be excluded. That is 2M Waipapa Ave, Diamond Harbour, and Palarenas Road, Woolston, by Tyrone and Jake. We will keep these debates and questions throughout the amendments focused on the topic in front of us. When we come back with the final plan to adopt, after all the amendments are done, there will be a chance for a wider debate on the entire annual plan. Everyone can do that. So that's a chance to make any overarching points that you want to make. Once all the amendments have been dealt with, then we will resume standing orders. They will then take a break for staff to work through the financial impact of any amendments and report back to us with the final numbers. Staff have told us that they will know at this point whether they can do the calculations today or whether we'll have to adjourn and come back on Thursday. Now that I've just finished reading War and Peace, we're back onto amendments, and for reference, we're starting with the amendments in my commentary. Right. So, have we got it up there? We will start with my recommendation on advice of the Chief Executive on subvention receipts. I will move it. Sam will second it. Are there any questions for staff? Pauline? Yep.
I'd like to move an amendment, please, that the council increase the amount of planned subvention receipts by 5 million in each year, 23, 24, etc.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
I'll need a seconder.
Yeah, Jake's happy to second that. So we go through the first one, is that right?
So you're making an amendment, not a foreshadowed amendment? So it'll be the amendment first?
Yep.
Okay. So the amendment is, where am I looking?
5. It's not been changed. Please change it.
I need to read it properly. don't
Change the numbers, yeah.
I? Just waiting for the number to be changed.
Just ask for clarity. Is that 5 million in 24, 25 and 23, 24? Is that 5 million in each year or 10 million in each year, or is that total across the 2 years?
Each year.
Okay.
So it would be 20 million,
Oops. Sorry, that was me.
and this reduces it to 10 million.
That's right.
Correct. Yeah, but 2 different tax years.
Isn't it? Before you debate, you want to get the staff advice.
Okay. So we'll get staff advice on the amendment then, please.
It's on screen. It just needs to be thrown on screen up there.
Oh, just while we're waiting for that to come up, I'll just say, so we're in an unusual year with for subventions, where we have additional subventions available in the next 2 years due to changes in tax legislation last year. Normally we'd only budget for approximately 2 million a year, and we would use that to reduce our rates impact. And any extra we would take as surplus and request council after year end to apply that surplus for debt reduction. Next year we have additional receipts forecast, and due to the significant times we are in, it is staff recommendation to consider applying more of those forecast receipts to reduce rates this year. Staff recommend to use this rates reduction for FY24 to recognise compensation for the impact of the Te Kaha spend being earlier than planned, which in effect increases our F24 requirement and reduces F26 of a 0.41%. The LTP process next year, which will require changes to reflect deliverability of our capital plan in 25 and beyond. So our current planned FY25 rates increase will change regardless. Recognising the current environment our residents are in with high inflation and the impact of revaluation, this is really the only year that we would recommend taking significant one-off receipts.
Shall I speak to it briefly?
Yes, Pauline, you can speak to it.
Thank you, and thanks for that, Leah. And I appreciate the benefit that the 10 million level of subvention will bring us in a rate relief, and we all welcome that. But I just have a concern for the future, and particularly for where we're going to end up in a couple of years if we use the 10 million. And normally you use it for debt relief, and this year we're proposing to use it for rate relief. So I'm proposing a compromise where we, instead of using the 10 million, we use 5 million. It would give me a little bit more comfort in the future. I'm concerned that we'll be facing in the future we may have to slash our capital program or be forced to sell assets, stop the cycleways. I don't know, but we do have an option next year to readdress this. So I would actually be proposing the 5 million as a compromise to give myself comfort as a decision maker around this table today.
Okay, Tim, and then Yanni.
Yeah, I'm not going to support this amendment. But the reason I am not going to support it is $10 million per year over 2 years is actually going to give relief to those families who have perhaps added to their mortgage to survive COVID with their businesses. And that is something really to take on board, because we talk about COVID, etc. But around this table, we have a guaranteed 6-figure salary. There are a lot of families who have added to their mortgages to survive through COVID. There are some that have not had vision for the future and just thought the interest rates were going to stay low. Mortgages have risen, and so have interest rates on those loans. So there are a lot of people sweating at the moment. So I think if we can keep the rates as low as possible at this stage, will allow those families and individuals to rebalance their sheet and hopefully have time to take a breath.
Tim, have you got a question of
We're sort of still
CFO?
the questions. But that's right. You've had your debate. That's brilliant. Thank you very much.
So if you've got a question at the end, that would be excellent.
If you want to make up a question for debate, you help yourself. No, you're on a roll. Yanni, please.
Thank you. Thanks for staff for the advice that they put up. Can they put it back up? And I was just wondering, can you just advise what the $5 million does in terms of that?
0.8%.
Yeah, 0.8, approximately 0.8. It's basically half.
So in the following year, what would happen? No, you wouldn't. You'd actually have extra, because if the rates aren't as low as they are this year, I presume that you would generate additional revenue that would carry forward. I think last time when staff put up the advice, what they show you over time is increased or decreased rates increases in the following year because of the way that it's done. So I just was trying to get because that table is really good. I guess I just don't quite understand what that looks like in 2020.
It depends on what you use. So if you use the 5 or 10 million the following year, obviously it reduces debt, our opening debt positions less. So yes, your rates will be lower in the following years. Correct. But the point is that none of us know what's going to happen once we go through an LTP. So we don't really know what that rate's impact is going to be in 25, 26.
Right. So the 0.5 would take if we went to the 5 million.
Yep.
We would be at 7.9.
Oh, sorry. It was in that email that I just sent.
Oh, is it in the email? Okay, sorry.
Yes, there you go.
Yeah.
All good.
7.13.
And just in terms of the tax changes I'm just trying to understand what the risk is if we don't take the full subvention amount now. What's the risk that option won't be available next year or the year after?
Look, this receipts, as long as the tax numbers come through, we will receive this based on the tax. So we're using losses that we've accumulated, right? So that's why it's an unusual year for the next 2 years. So it's not that it disappears. It's not a timing thing. It's just that we will need to use it in the next 2 years, and then they will reduce back to about $1 million a year because the tax changes.
And given that our companies are doing better than forecast, does that make a difference?
Yeah, that's because there's more tax profits, plus the tax laws changed, so that way Airport and Orion, who are not wholly owned, could actually come into it. That's the reason we've only ever had 2 million, is because we've had more losses than we have had tax profits.
Sorry, what I was asking is we've got F&P tomorrow, and what we can see is some of our companies are doing better than what we forecast. If our companies do really well over the next 12 months, does that change the quantum of subvention that we can get?
This is relating to the current year we are in now, so it's the tax year we're in. So our year end finishes this week, June, for most of our entities, and this is relating to that tax year. So it's the tax return that they will complete for this year, and then next year, if they do really well, it relates to the following year. But to a certain extent, it depends on it's our losses that will be the determining factor, how much the receipt is, not the tax profits, because we're going to run out of losses.
Okay, thank you. Victoria.
Thank you. Leah, you're an experienced CFO. I'm really keen to understand where your comfort levels are with this, with the first recommendation for 10 million. And in your introduction, you talked about our ability to adapt. Is this an example of our ability to adapt and to pull the levers? I'm just keen to understand where your comfort level is.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is, as I've been very clear about, one-off receipts is always a thing that we don't tend to try and do because it has that impact the following years. We are in unusual times. You'll see just from our draft, going out at a draft was 5.68, and then we were up where we are with things that are happening to us, not, that are outside our control. We were asked to look for levers that we could pull. That was what was challenged to the officers, and what we are saying, here is your option. You do not have to take today. You can choose to put rates to the 7.9, what we're recommending, as your CFO is going, we believe this is an unusual situation. There's a few things that are aligning, and it really is the only year that I would recommend it because we're in the final year of our LTP and we're about to start a new one, and we know we have to make some changes.
Thank you, Tyler.
Kia ora, Leah. Just for public knowledge, just talk to me about if we split up the 5 and 5 over this financial year and next. What does that look like for next year? Is that paying debt down or is that to offset rates?
The additional 5 million you would put towards debt, or you could actually apply it to rates if you wanted the following year, which would have an impact of, again, 0.8 next year, reduced, or your debt would be less, obviously impact because of capital.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I guess the common argument is we can talk about this during long-term plan. If we take the 10, then we can fight with things at the long-term plan. Can you talk to me about how, because I haven't been through a long-term plan process before, how minute the back and forth can get between projects, capital projects? Are we talking about the tens of thousands that we argue on, or are we talking about the millions?
I haven't been through one either, Tyler.
I can probably pick that one up.
Okay.
The answer is both. We start off and proposing, per the letter of expectation, to start off at the high level of the overall program.
Yep.
And looking at what's in it and its deliverability. Then working, it was a series of workshops with councillors down to the horse trading, if you like, of projects above and below the line. So Councillor Templeton is right, it's both. It does go down to that level of detail, but it starts up at the top.
Okay.
The only thing I'd say about the LTP, though, that budget was set 3 years ago, right? The world has changed a lot in everything we do. So it won't necessarily be we will need to look at the costs because we have a requirement to look at not only our deliverability, which we know is restricted, and we knew we couldn't deliver it in the last 3 years, and we need to actually come to the conclusion of what we can deliver, but aligned with that is what we can afford, what our residents can afford. So there will be hard decisions made in the LTP.
So how far would $5 million get us in the long-term plan process?
In regards to rates,
Like capital projects or debt, things like that. What's the impact?
rates, if we treat it like revenue, it's 0.8. Capital, I'm looking at Bruce here to do the numbers. He's not listening.
Sorry, I caught you off guard here. I just thought about this.
0.1. 5 million.
Probably less.
0.1. Very little.
0.05.
Okay.
Thank
That's
you.
cool. Thanks.
Thank you, Melanie.
So Leah, you said that this is, you've got models basically going into the future to work out like what the tax losses and profits are, etc. So, and then you said, well, what my question really is with those forecasts, what sort of scenarios could happen where those would not be accurate and where then we might have an issue in the future if we take this route?
Because this one for next year, FY24, the tax year is almost finished. Touch wood, nothing happens in the next 3 days. Pretty much their forecast profits are set. Their tax is a bit different because there's a few ins and outs, but they are not usually significantly different. So we're pretty confident with our forecast for next year. The following year, which will be the following year, will depend on, look what happened in COVID. The taxable profit happened at airport, reduced very quickly. So, it's the following year that would probably be more impact.
You're good, Mel? Mel, you're good? Good. Okay, thank you very much. So just for everyone, what will if we do the 5 million,
Yep.
how much will that make the rates increase be? Just for clarity.
0.13.
Okay, thank you very much. So we are now going to put the amendment, which is...
No. Question.
7.13 for this year, but this is going for 2 years. So in the second year, what is the rates saving?
Well, we don't know where we're going to put it. We don't know whether we're going to take it off debt repayment or rates. That will be the question that we'll be having in 12 months' time.
But if you have the rates at 7.13, you raise additional revenue within the next 12 months. that then means if you bring the subvention in later, you actually get
We have to
a
take
bigger
this-
reduction than
Yes.
0.8. So I'll just try. I don't need the quantum. I'll just try to understand next year. What would do we know what the effective percentage off rates would be? Not knowing what the exact rate level is, just the percentage that this would save.
Have you got an answer for that, Leah, please?
And
Thinking on your feet.
So that was the wording of the original Mayor's amendment that had 10 million on it over 23, 24, 24, 25. I just substituted the 10
Yeah. But could Leah answer the question?
So have you
So
got
if
an
we
answer to what?
reduce-
Sorry, you're on, Leah.
So if we reduce it to 5 million this year, which means we have, in theory, everything being the same, we'll have an additional 5 million, which we can apply to the following year, which will in total would be, essentially, if we wanted to take it on the following year, will be 15 million. I'm looking at Bruce. Come on, Bruce. 15 million, which essentially is 1.2, isn't it?
It's coming.
All things being equal. But what the part of the puzzle that we don't know, and that's if we apply it to revenue, rates, reducing rates revenue the following year. If we apply it to rates, essentially it'll be 15 million, which won't be as effective.
That's right. You can only have the rates reduction once.
You can have the rates reduction once, essentially. So yeah, but the part of the puzzle that we don't know for FY25 is what our starting point is, what the rates, we can look at what the LTP says it should be, which is about the 11, I think, %, but we don't know, because we don't know what happens with inflation. We don't know what happens with interest rates. We don't know, we can all forecast it, but that's when it gets a bit more crystal ball.
We've got a good idea from the F&P agenda tomorrow that everything is costing a lot more than what we're budgeting. So
Yeah, but high inflation is reducing.
But to
too.
be fair, Leah, we didn't, 12 months ago, we didn't know we'd be in this situation. It's very
Exactly
hard
right.
to crystal ball. Another 12 months, we could be the same, worse or better.
18 months ago, we were looking at a negative OCR.
That's right. So I think we've done this to death, have we? So,
We're now into debate.
okay, so now debate. Who would like to debate? Tim's had his debate, so he's out of... right. Anyone else like to have any debate? James?
Yeah, look, there's an opportunity for council to offset its tax losses essentially with subvention payments within the group, and I think this just makes sense. So, yep, there'll be some work to do next year come LTP, and I'm fine with that. But I definitely don't favour choosing to thrash our residents more than they already are being thrashed by high interest rates, a cost of living crisis, and when our country is literally right now in recession. So, yep, take the 10 million today. It's what I do. It's what our own staff are recommending we do, and it's what our residents need us to do.
Okay, Kelly.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to support this. Look, I mean, you have to remember where it came from. We asked our staff to go away and look for more, and they did, and came back to with a solution that many of us didn't know existed. We've got an opportunity. It's going to provide rates relief, significant, and I think we should take it with both hands. Thanks.
Okay, Jake.
Got Mark.
Look, I'm encouraging councillors to do the prudent thing and not recognise the additional 10 million of subvention receipts, remembering, of course, that $14 million has already been recognised and that has already been used to reduce the burden on our people this year. I worry that recognising an additional $10 million and therefore not rating for it is short-termism of the highest order. I feel that we'd be better placed to take a more conservative approach. We should wait until we actually receive a final sum and then make a decision on its best use from there. My preferred alternative use would be that we use the funds to pay down debt, but if councillors are of a mind to use these funds for rate relief, as we're suggesting today, then alternatively we could still do that in the next financial year, remembering the consequences of high inflation and a rising cost of living will be with us for some time. Now again, that's not my first preference. I think we should use this money for debt reduction and to improve our underlying financial position. But no matter what side of the fence you sit on, debt reduction or rate relief, I think the argument to decide what to do with this money upon actually receiving this money is compelling. And I must remind councillors, there is a real way to ease the debt burden, either the burden on people, and that is to support the option to reduce the uniform annual general charge. That will get relief. That will get relief to those who actually need it most in a long-term and structural way that is rates neutral.
Okay, Victoria.
Thank you. We really are in extraordinary times, and staff have confirmed to us that they would not be recommending the 10 million subvention credits if they didn't think that we could manage it safely. Our financial position is precarious, to say the least, and our ability to adapt is critical. And thanks for pointing that out to us, Leah, in your introduction. With the financial pressures on our households being front of mind for me, now is the time to pull all of our levers. Now is the time to lessen the burden on our ratepayers. And I think that using our subvention credits is one of those levers, our ability to adapt with maximum effect. I think it's smart financial management, and I think I really urge my colleagues to focus on the people of Christchurch now and to support the original proposal of subvention credits for 10 million. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you. I also thank staff for the work they've done on this. They know a lot more about the financial stuff than most of us around this table, so yeah, I do value what you bring to the table. And I think this is a really extraordinary situation we find ourselves in, and we do need to do everything we can to get this rates increase burden down. And I will certainly be supporting the original 10 million rather than the 5 million, because we need to be big and bold today and make this as sharper impact to help our ratepayers that we can. So could I challenge those around the table to please be bold, please think of the ratepayers who are going to be hurting in this, and support the original rather than the amendment. And also thinking of the UAGC, if you're thinking of trying to help the lower end ratepayers with the UAGC reducing, could I also suggest here that this subvention is an even sharper way of making bigger impacts? So, please support it.
Thank you, Mark. Sarah?
We do seem to always be in extraordinary times in Otatahi, Christchurch, and that makes every annual plan and long-term plan extraordinary and therefore completely normal for us. And so I don't see these particular circumstances as being extraordinary. They're just a different, if you know what I mean. However, the one thing this time that is extraordinary is the rates revaluation that has had a disproportionate impact on lower value properties in our city. And that's why today, I'll just do the one debate across those three things. I will be voting for the staff recommendation for the subvention receipts. I will be voting to lower rates by keeping the excess water supply targeted rate at 700 litres. And I'll be voting for the lowered UAGC.
Thank you. Andre.
Thank you. As a new council, the first year is always somewhat disappointing because you're working on the last council's long-term plans. You're very limited for what options you've actually got in front of you and what you can do. But this council voted no to exploring some of the options that we may have had. This council voted no to exploring levels of service. So our options are very, very, very limited and to get us in the position we've got today. So what we do have is an option that gives us a small amount of breathing room and the opportunity to have rates below the rate of inflation. Then come the long-term plan, we will have options in front of us where we've got the options to either make some unpopular decisions and find some savings, or we can keep going and keep spending on everything we possibly can. It is kicking down a can down the road, but if we come back here again next year and try and chuck in a couple of hundred amendments and all these projects we may not be able to deliver anyway, we're going to have the same problem next year, same problem we're having again this year. Sarah is 100% correct. It is extraordinary times every year, and goodness knows what's in store for us over the next year. There's no such thing as a quiet year. I like to pretend there is, but anything could happen. But that just re-emphasises the need to actually find savings where we can. But this is one option we have in front of us. Thank you very much, staff, for doing so. And I think we should take it. We've got an opportunity to have our rates below the rate of inflation, I think we should take that opportunity. So I'll be voting for the 10 mil. Thank you.
Thank you, mate. Tyrone.
So I just want to speak in favour of Pauline's amendment. So look, staff have done an amazing job to get us here. There's no doubt about that. If we accept the amendment, we'll be presenting a rates rise below the rate of inflation already, which is a monumental achievement. Will we manage the same thing next year? I ask you. So I'll just finish with it is a part of the wise man to keep themselves today for tomorrow and not to venture all his eggs in one basket.
Sam.
I was going to start by saying I'm going to copy Sarah, but I don't mean that literally in terms of the way you're voting, but just mentioning all three at once. So I won't support the amendment, but I'll support the staff recommendation. I will support the water being at 900 and then support the UGAC not dropping. So I'll just get them out of the way now. But the only thing I would say is I actually really enjoy these days because it really does, I think, encourage a really good professional debate around the council table, and we should really reflect on these days and do them as much as possible in our normal meetings as well.
Thank you very much. So, to Melanie and then Tyler.
Fiscally responsible people focus on paying off debt now to save money later. Fiscally irresponsible people put off paying debt so they can feel momentarily more well off. We all know the downside of this is not just that the debt needs to be paid off at a later date, but there's also more in accumulated interest. Financial lunacy. Supporting the full increase in subvention payment is not doing the best by our residents. It's the equivalent of handing some free lollies to them this year to sweeten them up, but then turning up next year asking them to pay for those lollies along with the interest we could have saved. Don't be fooled by this sweetener. I think the risk in future years is too great. As Jake said, the current financial situation the world finds itself in now is not going away anytime soon and could get significantly worse. Taking the full subvention payment now may well leave a nasty taste in our mouth in time to come, and it will mean we have less ability to adapt when that time comes.
Tyler?
Kia ora koutou. I will be in support of the Deputy Mayor's amendment in light of the fact that I absolutely understand the strain that are on households. For me, being in Christchurch has been one of the biggest joys of my life, being able to be in the city and represent the city, particularly the Riccarton ward. But not just that, I always think about the future, as everyone knows, and thinking about paying this debt down, we argue between each other around, not really around the issue, but more about how we do it. And the reason why I'm saying this is because I am trying to look at a balanced approach in paying debt down while also providing some relief to those households that are actually getting hit pretty hard. You know, we all know that the cost of living crisis is happening all around. Every single person's being affected in this country, and I do see positives in both aspects. I will talk on the other ones too, actually, to make it really quick, same as Sam and Sarah, is I'm in support of keeping it at 700, and I am also in support of the UAGC that Jake has put across. I'm looking forward to seeing how we work out our first annual plan, and it's exciting for someone who's new into council to see what this happens. And I don't know what the LTP is going to look like, so I would really like to keep some money to see if we can hold to our word in the long-term plan discussions, which I'm looking forward to very, very much. There's so many exciting things I'm looking forward to, Mr. Mayor.
I will hold you to this.
But I appreciate staff's work on this and across the whole annual plan process. These sheets are phenomenal. The work that Kathy has done is phenomenal. It's made it so easy for newly elected members to get their head around things. And we do know that there are zeros after zeros after zeros which we have to look at, on top of a lot of words. The whole dictionary is in a lot of these agendas and the papers that we see before us. Therefore, I'll finish by saying thank you, and remembering that I've got this saying, everyone's talking about sayings now. My favourite one is by Bruce Lee. It's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war, which means always be prepared for something that's in front of us and being put into situations that make you feel uncomfortable, quite like this one. you know, there are those decisions, but we don't actually quite know where we want to lean. So therefore, we need to try and be brave. And after we make those decisions, we sit back and say, actually, Tyler, if you made the wrong decision, live with it and move on to the next one. Kia ora.
Okay, so I think we've all, Pauline? Yep.
I'll just wind up.
Yeah, wind away.
Wind away. Hang on a minute. Get the, what do you call it? The hoody-goody out.
Yep.
Look, this has been a really good debate. There's no right or wrong here. It's just, I think I'd rather take a cautionary approach to this. And as others have mentioned, we do have next year to readdress this as well. And yeah, goodness knows what's in store for us. I think this is the time for a cautionary approach and to give people some rate relief this year, and we've got the opportunity to do it again next year. We could give a bigger amount of rate relief this year, and it could be a bigger hike next year, which would not go down very well at all. And as Councillor McClellan's pointed out already, there's already been $14 million used for subvention, put aside for subvention. So what we're talking about here is another 10, or in my amendment, another 5. There's no quick fix for the global economic situation. It's not going to miraculously disappear for people. We do not know how long the pain is going to continue. So I think keeping something up our sleeves for next year to avoid a potential big hike is a good move. I'm exercising financial caution. And if we do accept the 10 million subvention, we will be delivering a rate increase below inflation, which is actually a rate cut. But we're still expected to deliver, with our inflationary pressures, the same levels of service. In fact, people have come in and asked for more. So, as I said, there's no right or wrong. It's been a really interesting debate, and I do hope you'll support a cautionary, fiscally responsible approach.
Okay, so can everyone see on the screen above me, and I'll read it out. This is Pauline and Jake's. The council increases the amount of the planned subvention receipts by $5 million in each of 23-24 and 24-25 to reduce the rates requirements in those years. Now, I imagine we'll do division. Is that the easiest way, I think? Thank you. Kathy?
The Mayor?
No.
Deputy Mayor Cotter?
Yes.
Councillor Peters?
No.
Councillor Harrison-Hunt? Yes. Councillor Coker?
No.
Yeah.
Councillor Fields? Councillor Donovan?
You there, Celeste?
Just one second.
If you can't speak, you could indicate with your thumb up or down.
For the amendment or against?
I think she's pointing to the ground.
No, she's not.
Give us a sign.
I think she's writing something down on a piece of paper.
You could always come back to here.
Just give her a second.
Give her some time.
I'll come back. Councillor Henstock?
No.
Councillor Moore?
No.
Councillor Goff?
No.
Councillor Johansson? Councillor Kewen?
No.
Councillor MacDonald?
No.
Councillor Barber?
No.
Councillor McClellan?
Yes.
Councillor Scandrett?
No.
Councillor Templeton? Councillor Donovan?
No.
Aha.
Is it clear?
That's good.
Lovely and clear. Thank you.
Thank you, Celeste. Okay, got them all?
So that's 4 for yes, 13 for no.
So thank you very much. So that has lost. Thank you.
So we go to substantive.
So we'll now go to the main event, which I will read out, which I can't see. Thank you. The council increases the amount of the planned subvention receipts by $10 million in each of 23-24 and 24-25 to reduce rates requirements in those years. And we'll do division again.
That's you.
Councillor Kewen,
Yes.
Councillor McClellan,
No.
Councillor MacDonald,
Yes.
Councillor Henstock,
Yes.
Councillor Moore,
Yes.
Councillor Scandrat,
Yes.
Councillor Harrison Hunt, Councillor Coker, Councillor Fields, Councillor Peters,
Yes.
the Mayor,
Yes.
Councillor Templeton, Councillor Barber,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Cotter, Councillor Johansson, Councillor Donovan,
Yes.
Councillor Goff.
Yes.
Okay.
That's 12 for yes, 4 for no, and 1 for abstain.
So that is carried. Thank you very much.